بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه. فإن خير الحديث كلام الله عز وجل، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد, the topic of our talk today, bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal, will be on the science of al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl, or ilm al-Rijal, or al-Ruwat, which can be translated to mean a literal translation, the science of men, or the science of transmitters, or biographical evaluation, or the science of praising and criticism, as is translated commonly. And before we start the talk, bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal, there's two things that I want to point out. The first thing is, there's a request from one of the sisters for the speaker to give an outline to prepare the subject with vocabulary words so we can increase and follow up our knowledge. May Allah bless us. Now, we say to the sister, wa iyyak, may Allah bless you and reward you well for your diligence and your eagerness upon benefiting. And this is a good thing. And we encourage the sisters and the brothers, firstly, to do the like to this, to be concerned and not to just sit and to be lectured and talked to. However, as we mentioned last night, when we spoke about the compilation of the Sunnah, that this is not a thing where we can talk about and encompass everything in 1 hour. It's impossible. It's impossible. Rather, it's unfair to that science to attempt to do that. La yumkin. From the beginning, al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl is something which is extremely important. That's the second thing I want to mention. Before we actually speak about it and define it, and talk about the different aspects and angles of al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl and everything which pertains to it, al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl is something which is very serious and very important. And it was an essential key and an essential step in the preservation of al-Islam and in the preservation of the Sharīʿah, as is the topic of this seminar, this educational seminar, how Islam was preserved, how Islam remained as a perfect religion. Al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl remained that it was one of the key factors, one of the most important factors in the preservation of this deen, and the preservation of this deen. As Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, al-Isnādu min ad-dīn, وَلَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادُ لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ مَا شَاءَ. He said that the isnad, the chain of narration, is from the religion. It's something that's essential. It's something that's important. It's something that's vital. It's muhim. And if it wasn't for the isnad, then anyone could say whatever he wanted to say. And the isnad cannot be accepted, nor can it be rejected unless it's Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl, grading the narrative to trustworthy, from a trustworthy individual, from a reliable individual, from a pious person, from the companion, the Prophet first said this is halal, and so on and so forth. So al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl is extremely important, extremely essential, and playing a role in the preservation of the Shariah. And this word or this term, I'm sure we hear, many of you hear all of the time, al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. This is from Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. This is Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. This is an affair of praise and criticism. This is an affair of Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl, Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. Detailed praise, detailed criticism, general praise, and so on and so on and so forth. Al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl is an honorable science, a noble science, a science that countless scholars lived for. And their entire lives was nothing but preserving al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. It is not a science that a person gets on the internet and he sends out an email and forwards to people, and that's Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. It's not something which you get on the phone and you call someone, a scholar, and say, that's not Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. Al-Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl is not pointing fingers and calling names. He's this and he's that. And he's incorrect and we're correct. That's not Jarḥ wa al-Taʿdīl. This foolishness, this nonsense, the hate of countless people, and the fanaticism, and the blind following, the extremism, and the excessiveness of countless individuals is not al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. Rather, al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl is no different from al-Mustalah, or ilm al-ilal, or takhrij, or shuruḥ al-hadith. The other sciences and fields of hadith is no different. Mustalah hadith, the terminology. This is sahih, this is hasan, this is da'if, this is fabricated terms. The explanation of the hadith, the fiqh of the hadith is a science, it's a field. Al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl is not something that you can just say off your tongue and flick it off your tongue and it must be applied and you have to accept it. That's not Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. Rather, that is the utmost disrespect. The utmost disrespect to these imams who live their lives to preserve this deen. That it will be utmost disrespect to take Imam Ahmad or Ali bin al-Madini or Imam Muslim or Imam al-Nasa'i or Imam ibn Hibban or Ibn Adi and so on and so forth and put them in the same column with Fulan and this person and that person and this person. Individuals, many of them who haven't studied al-Islam, who never left their homes to travel to seek ilm. Many individuals who don't know the Arabic language. Many individuals who can barely recite the Quran. If they lived in a Muslim country and they recited the Quran, they could be whipped and flogged because of their disrespect to the Quran. That's not al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, and that isn't the person who's qualified to speak about al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. Rather, al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, as we will explain, bi-idhnillahi azza wa jal, is a science that only a few select individuals, Allah azza wa jal made them for, to speak about it and talk about it. And this will become clear bi-idhnillahi azza wa jal when we speak about the danger of defaming or disparaging a Muslim's honor. It's extremely dangerous. And we all know the countless ayat in the Quran and the countless ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which speak about the harm of the tongue and the danger of the tongue. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, that man who was a Siddiq, from the first to believe in the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, promised paradise. That man who had marks on his face from tears. That man who gave all of his wealth, all of his belongings and possessions for Islam and for jihad. He cried and he held his tongue and he said, هَذَا أَوْرَدَنِ الْمَوَارِدِ. He says, this has destroyed me. And another narration, he says, I wish I was a bird in the tree, to just sit in the tree. No hereafter, no reckoning, no standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. That was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. That was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. That was the fear that he had for his tongue. So what do you think is the case of us who are told we are heedless and negligent of what comes from our tongue? And the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, when he was asked by Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, أَوْ إِنَّا لَمُؤَاخَذُونَ بِمَا نَتَكَلَّمُ بِهِ, he says, will we be taken into account? Will we be held accountable for that which we say with our tongues? The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, ثَكِلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ. He says, may your mother be bereaved of you. May you have no mother. What type of statement is this? Oh, Ibn Mas'ud. He says, وَهَلْ يَكُبُّ النَّاسِ. He says, will anything cause the people to be pulled on their faces and drugged and the hellfire on their faces, on their noses, إِلَّا حَصَائِدْ أَلْسِنَتِهِمْ, except for that which comes from their tongue, except for that which is put forth by their tongue. And the account of the hadith that show the danger of the tongue. So when you speak about al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, it's something which is extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. And the people who spoke about al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, of the people of knowledge, were the people of utmost piety. Utmost piety. If we look in the book al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl of Ibn Abi Hatim, rahimahullah ta'ala, who died in the beginning of the first half of the 4th century, this great scholar, who was the son of a great scholar, who lived in a time of countless great scholars, the very first thing that he mentioned in his book was what? His book al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, several volumes. What did he mention first? Did he mention calling people liars? Did he mention the obligation of Jarḥ? Did he mention the very first thing he mentioned was the biography of the ulama of hadith, of Imam Malik and Layth ibn Sa'd and Sufyan al-Thawri and al-Awza'i and so on and so forth. What did he say about these ulama? He spoke about their prayer at night, their fasting during the daytime, the charity that they gave, their exceptional, intimidating memory, and so on and so forth. For what purpose? To show the people that these scholars who spoke about al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl were qualified to do it. And they were pious people. People who prayed all night. People who fasted during the day. People who finished the Quran within 3 days, 7 days, 10 days. That's what type of people they were. They weren't people who were known for sin. They weren't individuals who were known for ma'siyah. They weren't individuals who were known for accompanying the people of sin. They weren't individuals who studied for a year or 6 months or 9 months or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. They were expert scholars who were qualified to do it. And they realized the obligation that Allah had placed upon them, so that's why they did it. So the point that we're trying to make is that you have to pay attention to this. That's the very first thing he mentioned in his book, to show the people that they are qualified for Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl is not something that anyone can talk about and anyone can speak about who doesn't have the correct qualification. And even when that is the case, when you do have the correct qualifications, it is of utmost danger. And that's why I find Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala. There were several scholars and narrators of hadith that may have been liars or extremely weak. And Imam al-Bukhari would never state those exact words. فيه نظر سكتوا عنه ترك حديثه منكر الحديث. He wouldn't say Kadhab, he's a great liar, as Imam Ibn Ma'in would say. Imam Yahya Ibn Ma'in, the great friend of Imam Muhammad, he would say Kadhab, Khabith, a filthy, disgusting liar, Jahmi. As for Imam al-Bukhari would say Taraku hadithahu. They left off his hadith. They left off his hadith. Because he feared on Yawm al-Qiyamah to come and have an adversary and an enemy, someone debating and quarreling with him in front of Allah. You spoke about me, you spoke about Muhammad, you defamed me. Even though it was true and it was right. But his piety prevented him from doing that. And that was Imam al-Bukhari. So what is the case with Fulan and Alan and Ibn Fulan and Abu Fulan? That's all they talk about, Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. Every single night, every email, every lecture, Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. And they have no shyness, no shame, no hesitation to speak about the people and defame their honor. And this is Imam al-Bukhari. Is Imam al-Bukhari not from the people we are to follow? Manhaj al-Salaf, following the Salaf? Now, we have an example in Imam al-Bukhari. فَلْنَتَّقِ اللَّهِ. So we should fear Allah with our tongue. We should fear Allah Azza wa Jalla with our tongue. In general, especially when we speak about al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, because the tongue will take you to hell. As the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ مِنْ رِضْوَانِ اللَّهِ لَا يُلْقِي لَهَا بَالًا. He says, verily the slave will say a word from Allah's good pleasure, showing no concern to it, just praising Allah, mentioning Allah, from Allah's good pleasure. يَرْفَعَ اللَّهُ بِهِ دَرَجَاتٍ أَوْ بِهَا دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah will raise the slave, exalt the slave in levels by that statement that he makes. And then he said, وَإِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ مِنْ سُخْطِ اللَّهِ لَا يُلْقِي لَهَا بَالًا. A slave would say a word or a statement from the anger of Allah, showing no concern. Open up his mouth, just say the word. No problem. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? فَتَهْوِي بِهِ. It will cause him to drift, to go to a fire, أَبْعَدْ مِنَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Oh, come on, call it, which is further and more expansive than the east and the west. What yellow than that? When you open up your mouth and you talk, you have no shyness, no shame. You just tatakalam, speak, showing no concern about the words that come from your mouth. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said about it. So let us be very careful with our tongue. Let us fear Allah Azza wa Jal and be conscious over what we say. And on Yawm al-Qiyamah, we will stand in front of Allah, each and every one of us, and we will be asked about what we said. And I'll leave you with this one statement of Imam Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, rahimahullah, the great scholar of al-Usul and Fiqh and Hadith, the great Imam of the early 9th century. He died in the early 9th century, I believe 805 or 804. He said that I never made a statement. I never said something. I never made any statement about a person, about a rule. I never made a statement إِلَّا وَأَنَا قَدْ أَعَدْتُ لَهُ جَوَابًا. Except that I prepared an answer for that statement. Except that I knew what I was going to say in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla. He was conscious about his tongue. And he was a man of great piety. He was a great scholar. He wasn't a student of knowledge. He wasn't a da'iyah. He wasn't a person that lives in America who studied overseas for a year or 6 months or 9 months. He didn't go to Egypt. He didn't go to the University of Medina for 5 years. La, he was an imam. He was an imam. And he said that I prepared an answer for everything that I said. Now let's ask ourselves, have we prepared answers for what we say? Have we prepared one answer for one statement? There's many of us, many individuals who make countless statements. Countless statements, statement after statement, take after take. And they have no answer. What the hell is that? So we should fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regard to our tongues. And this is once again extremely important with regards to al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. And that is because the origin of the Muslim's honor and the Muslim's blood and the Muslim's wealth is what? It's sacred. It's haram. And the only time when it's permissible to attack a Muslim's honor is if something pertaining to Allah's deen that's serious. But if the asl is not to speak about people, that's not the asl. The asl of a Muslim's honor is that it's sacred. The asl of a Muslim's honor is not that it's open and free. With this being the case, as for the outline of the talk, then as we just mentioned, al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl cannot be spoken about in an hour. It cannot be covered in an hour. However, we'll try our best and we'll attempt to do what we can. And the first point is to speak about what is al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. What does it mean? What does this term mean? What is the meaning of al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl? Not the translation of the term, but the meaning of it. Secondly, what is the ruling of this science? Is it obligatory to learn? Is it recommended? Is it haram? Who are the pioneers in this science? The ulama who found this knowledge. What is the proof of this science in the Quran and the Sunnah? And some of the affairs of those who are qualified to speak about al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, some of the terms, some of the books, and its importance and its essential role in establishing and preserving the Sharīʿah. It's a brief, rough outline. If we have more time, and if there was a series of classes, 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, then we can do a proper outline. But when we only have an hour, 45 minutes, it's very difficult. Very difficult. So we say al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. The word jarh, jim, ra, ha, comes from the verb jaraha. And the jaraha in the Arabic language means to stab someone, to poke someone, to puncture someone, to pierce something. Jaraha. It literally means to pierce something or to puncture something. So al-Jarḥ is the masdar, or al-Jurḥ is the masdar for jaraha. The verbal noun for the verb jaraha. And there's difference of opinion amongst the people of the Arabic language, the scholars of the Arabic language, when it's with a fatha and when it's with a dhamma. Some scholars say that when it's with a fatha, it pertains to speaking about people, attacking someone's fame or honor. And when it's with a dhamma, then it's talking about a physical piercing, stabbing someone with a sword or a spear or a pole arm or whatever it may be. So that's what the word jarh literally means. As for the word al-Taʿdīl, then it comes from the verb ʿabdala, which comes from adala, ayn, dal, lam. And the word adala, or this verb adala, it means taqweem al-shay, wa taswiyatuhu, wa muwazanatuhu. It literally means to straighten something out. To straighten something out. If you have a crooked piece of metal, to straighten it out. To make it even and level. Make it parallel. This is a rough linguistical translation of the word adala. And we'll see the benefit or the similarity between this linguistical meaning and its technical meaning. All this clear before we move on. As for its term, as a term, a technical term, then al-Jarḥ is, or al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl is the science, the detailed science, the honorable, noble science of describing a narrator of hadith saying something about a narrator, a reporter of a hadith, calling him this, saying him that, saying this about his hadith, with a wording or a statement, which will either make us to weaken his narration, tal'een, his narration is not that strong, or to declare it to be weak, or to reject it. That's jarh. When we make jarh of a narrative of hadith, we're going to state something about this reporter, Imam Ahmad, Ibn Qani, An-Nasa'i, Ibn Ma'in, Shu'bah. You're going to say something about this narrative of hadith, and once you get that statement, one of the three things is going to happen. One of three things. The first thing is either he's going to say something about that narrator which makes his narration layyin. It's not that strong. It's fair. It's not that weak, but it's not strong at all. All that? Or it's going to make his narration weak. His narration is weak. It's not accepted. Or the third and the worst level is that it's going to cause us to reject his narration. Meaning, his narration is not accepted, and it cannot be used as a supporting evidence. It can't be used as a supporting evidence. Let's make an example of this. We have a student who has an A average, a B average, C average, D average, and we have an F. Now, the A student is at the top of the list. B student is not too far. Now, a C student is okay. A D is on the borderline. All this, he's passing, but he's barely passing. A F, a lot. His grade, you can't pass the class. He's an F student. All this, al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl is like this. When we make a statement about a narrator, something about him, it's either going to cause us to accept his hadith or to reject his hadith. So in brief, or in layman terms, al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl is a science that pertains to speaking about narrators of hadith and talking about them. Do we accept their narration? Do we reject their narration? Why do we accept the narration? Why do we reject them? And what are those technical terms that are used? He's thiqah. What does this word mean? The translation is trustworthy, reliable. But what does it mean? Tayyib? He's da'if. As a weak narrator, what does that mean? He's saduq. His memory is okay. He's fair. Mashid hal. He's kadhab. What does kadhab mean? According to the scholars of hadith. It just doesn't mean a liar, but it's a specific meaning. A specific technical term. Matruk al-hadith. He is abandoned. We've left him alone. What does it mean? It's a technical term. That's what al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl is. Just like when we have mustalah hadith, hadith terminology, we say this hadith is sahih. What does sahih mean? Authentic, sound? No. What does it mean? What are the conditions for it to be sahih? We have a hadith which is hasan. What does that mean? Sahih al-Bukhari. What is a book called sahih, as we talked about last night? What is a sunan? And so on and so forth. Clear on this issue? We have a science pertaining to the terms of hadith. What is a mursal hadith? You may read in Tafsir Ibn Kathir. This hadith is mursal. What does that mean? This hadith is da'if. What does that mean? This hadith is fabricated. Mawdu', spurious. What does that mean? That's mustalah hadith terminology. Clear? Al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl pertains to the narrators of those hadith. The narrators of the hadith. How were they graded and criticized? We can't have a sahih hadith unless we have a narrator who's thiqah. The trustworthy person is one who brings that sahih hadith. So how do we know that that person is trustworthy? Clear? How do we know that? How do we know that he's trustworthy, that he's reliable? How do we know that he isn't a liar? How do we know that he possesses righteousness and religious integrity? That is what? Al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl. Everyone clear on it before we move on? Everyone clear, inshallah? All of it. Clear. Sahih. Okay, Bismillah Azza wa Jalla, one brother could volunteer and explain al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl in his own words. What is Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl? In his own words, a few brief words. Inshallah, we have a volunteer. If not, then I'll be forced to call someone. One. So what? Come brief words, but in your own words. I don't want you to repeat back what I said to you. Well, together, طيب بارك الله فيك. That's part of it, but there remains more. وين please inshallah. تفضل أخي تفضل.
That one was something of the open acting what was
partial something تفضل do it.
I thought good that it either the edible one with the wall and the book never in there that everything wrote that.
That's part of it. That's part of it. You're not giving me what I just gave you. It's a very simple answer. Very, very simple. A few brief words. Tafadhal.
Oh, I simple. Very further the week where's that was ISIS taxes they multiply for the TV walls.
Ahsan. That's the closest one. It is the science. That's very simple. The science of grading narratives of hadith. Khalas. Washing hands. Okay. That is it. Al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl is the science of grading narratives of hadith. A grading system, huh? An evaluation test. Ma'am, you pass the test. They grade you as a student. Mahmoud, A student, B student, C student, F student. Why did you get an F? Huh? Why did you get a C? Why was your GPA like this? Ma'am, it's a grading, it's an evaluation, a system. All the clear on this. Would this being the case, then al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl, the foundation of the science is found in the Quran, firstly. And secondly, in the authentic sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wa salam. And al-Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl, one, there was narration, at the time in which there was narration of hadith was saying, it was without a doubt obligatory. Wajib wa dururatun. It was of necessity for there to be Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl. Now, because it is an obligation upon the Muslims, as we explained last night, to conserve the Sunnah. Now, Mali, to compile and to conserve the Sunnah. And if the only way we can conserve the Sunnah and compile it and protect it is by speaking about a person, whether it's good or bad, then speaking about that individual becomes what? Becomes wajib. If that's the only way, let's make an example of this. If you went to court, you went to court, a Muslim judge, and somebody, they took your money unjustly, and you wanted your right, you wanted your haqq, and you stood in front of the judge, and that man who took your money, or you claimed to have taken your money, he brought witnesses. And he says, these are my witnesses, he's wrong, I didn't take his money, kada. And you knew in your heart that that man, or those two men that he brought were liars, or men who drank alcohol, or men that did very bad actions. You knew this for sure. Would it be permissible for you to defame those witnesses and say that he's a liar, he's a kadhab, he's this, he's that? Would it be permissible, yes or no? It would be permissible. It would be permissible. Why would it be permissible? It's a Muslim, it's his honor. How can you say that about him? Hide your brother's faults. Why would it be permissible? Why? Why is that a condition? لماذا? تفضل.
Greater or
La, it's something very simple. La, because the only way you want to get your money is by defaming him. That's it. How can I get my haqq if the judge believes those witnesses? Tayyib? Simple as that. The only way you want to get your money. If you don't speak out, I'm going to take their testimony. Leave the courtroom. Khalas. So if that's the case with regards to some money or some property or marriage or divorce, then what do you think is the case with the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Without a doubt, it will be permissible to speak about a Muslim's honor for that purpose. And that purpose only. Not to embarrass the person or to defame a person just for your own nafs. For your own nafs. La. For the preservation of the Sunnah. Everyone clear with this? Fine. There are countless evidences in the Quran and there are countless ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which prove this. We don't have time to mention all of them. We'll mention one from the Quran and we will mention one from the Sunnah. From the evidences of the Quran is the well-known verse in Surah al-Hujurat in which Allah Azza wa Jalla says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنْ جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. Or you who believe, when a sinful person comes to you, rather, that's not what we want right now. We want a daleel from the Quran speaking about jarh, criticizing. طيب, can someone mention before I mention it? A verse in the Quran in which there is jarh, which is criticism, which someone is being mentioned in a bad manner. Surah Al-Fatiha. طيب, كيف? The Christians and the Jews, مغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. طيب, that's not too far, but that's general. That's general. Ahsan, but that's general. It's not a specific person being mentioned. تفضل. ثبت يد أحسن. Allah clearly spoke about Abu Lahab. طيب, Al-Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he mentioned in his Sahih, Kitab al-Janaiz, the book of funerals, under the chapter Dhikru Shirar al-Mawta, mentioning the evilest of, or the worst of, dead and deceased people. طيب, it's jarh, speaking about a person and an individual. طيب, one from the Sunnah, a hadith in which the Messenger of Allah said something bad about an individual. When the woman, what's her name? Ya Mahdi, Abu Abdullah, Ya Ahl Sunnah. We said last night, and we'll say it over and over again, that Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said, Ahl Sunnati a'arifu an-nasi bil-haqq wa arhamuhum lil-khalq. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah are the most knowledgeable of mankind of the truth. They know the truth better than anyone else, and the most merciful to creation. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we have to know this information. If you don't know, who else will know it? Jama'at al-Tabligh, the Asha'ira, the Mutasawwifa. طيب, the hadith in which it came, asking about marriage. طيب, what happened? He spoke about who? Muawiyah radiallahu anhu and Abu Jahm. What did he say about Muawiyah radiallahu anhu? May Allah be pleased with him? Not what he said about Muawiyah. He said that about Abu Jahm. He said something else about Muawiyah. He didn't say he was stingy. Something else. Fadl. That's not what he said about Abu Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Fadl. He didn't have wealth. So he was a pauper, he was poor. He didn't have money. That was mentioning something bad about an individual, but it was as a maslahah. It was a benefit. And her to find a good husband. He says, Anki Usama, marry Usama. So, the point that we're trying to get is that if it's permissible to speak about a Muslim with regard to marriage and divorce, then there remains no doubt it will be permissible to speak about a Muslim to protect the Sunnah. And to keep the Shari'ah pure. Because as we said, if it wasn't for the Isnad, if it wasn't for the grading of the Isnad, then anyone could say whatever they want to. This is permissible, this is a hadith, this is impermissible. So this shows the importance of al-Jarḥ and tabdīl and the role that it played in the preservation of the Shari'ah. Moving on. Now we want to speak about bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal. What are some of the terms that are used with regard to grading narrators of hadith? And what do these terms mean? What do these terms mean? Mutawatir. Is that intended to a narrator or a hadith? Hadith. We want the narrator, the rawi, the reporter. Fadl. Da'if. Which means what? He's weak. What does that mean? We'll start from the beginning. The first term or the top of the list is, you could say, Imam, Hafiz, Hujjah, Jabal, an Imam, great scholar, great memorizer. It's a person who's like crystal clean, excellent, impeccable memory. Then beneath that person is Thiqatun Thiq, someone who's trustworthy, which means he's not perfect. However, he has certain characteristics. He has two main characteristics underneath which follow countless other characteristics. The first characteristic that he must possess is called al-Adala. He must have righteousness, religious integrity. He must be a pious Muslim. Not a perfect Muslim, but he must be pious. In most cases, he's pious. He makes a mistake, he makes a sin, he makes tawbah and he leaves it off. This is the first condition for someone to be trustworthy, thiqah. And this is from al-Taʿdīl. Waḍih? The person who goes into the middle of the street and drinks alcohol is not thiqah. He's not adad. He's not righteous. We don't have to go on and mention too many examples, let alone any names of individuals. But a person who is a known sinner is not a person who has adalah. He does not possess integrity. He is not someone who is thiqah. He's not trustworthy. If he says he's trustworthy, if he calls himself trustworthy, if he labels himself, I'm trustworthy, he's not trustworthy. As long as he's missing out on that first condition. Waḍih? The second condition is that person, he must have a book. He must have accuracy in his memory. He must have a retentive memory. Which means, if he narrated 100 hadith, he got 95 of them right. Or 90 of them. So if he went down to 89, 87, 85, then he will go to the next level, which is called saduq. A saduq. One who's truthful. He doesn't lie. He doesn't make up narrations, but his memory isn't the best. He's a C student. He's a C average. He doesn't have the worst grade, but he doesn't have the best grade. If he narrated 100 hadith, then he got 70 right. 65, then it will be saduq. Underneath the saduq is the person, which we say saduqun yahim. Saduqun sayyul hizr. Saduqun yuhti. La ba'ta bihi. Muqaribul hadith. Is the person, if he narrated 100 hadith, let's say he got 60 right and 40 wrong. He's on the edge. He's on the borderline. Now, if a person was 50-50, then his hadith wouldn't be accepted by itself, but it could be used for supporting narration, which we'll get to at a further time. Beneath that level is the person who is called ضعيف, weak. He's weak. He's not a liar. He's not extremely weak. He's not the worst narrator, but he's weak. Meaning, if he narrated 100 hadith, he got what? 40 right and 60 wrong. Clear on this. He may have an F. He may have got a 50. He may have got a 59. It's on the borderline, but he fell. He's weak. All this, he can take a retest. Then beneath the person who's weak, and that which is called, or the one who's called ضعيف جدا, is one who's extremely weak. His memory is poor, terrible memory. Out of 100 hadith, he only got 10 right, or 20, and 80 wrong. Then after this person is the one who's called matruk, matrukul hadith. A person who's abandoned means, it doesn't literally mean abandoned, it means the person who's a liar. He lies when he speaks, but he doesn't fabricate hadith. When he talks to a person, we know Fulan is a liar. A long time. Fulan is lied. But he won't have the nerve to lie on the Prophet. That person's hadith cannot be accepted. Even though we don't have any proof that he lied against the Prophet, but we cannot accept his hadith. Clear? It's called matruk, muttaham. He's accused of being of lying. As for the one who lies on the Prophet ﷺ, then he is kadhab, a great liar, and his hadith is never ever accepted. It cannot be used to support another weak narration. It is thrown in the trash. Well, this is a very brief summary of the levels of narrators of hadith. From the top is thiqah, or iman, hujjah. Then we have just a normal thiqah. Then we have saduq. Then we have saduq la ba'bi. He's okay, he's fair. Then we have da'if, weak. Then we have very weak. Then we have someone who's abandoned. And then we have someone who is a liar, dajjal, or ba'. He's a dajjal, he's a liar, he's a great liar. Now, once we mention this, let's ask a question. How do we know that a narrator of hadith is trustworthy or not? Reliable or he's not reliable? How do we know this? How do we know if someone lies or someone doesn't lie? How do we know? How did the ulama of the past, how did they find this out? What was their system of evaluating the narrator? That's a question. Ask those who are around him. Possible. Ask your family members. Close. But it's not right on, it's not hitting the nail on the head. He's in the chain of narration. We want to find out about him. Now, how did Bukhari do it? Everything. All the way in the back.
I
can't hear you, Akhi. If he's known, yani someone is a famous reporter of hadith, like that, like, Ahsan, this is one of the ways in which we prove that a person is trustworthy. Can we make an example of this? Someone who's famous narrator of hadith, and which there aren't too many statements about him, but he's famous for being an imam of hadith. It's Hafid bin Rahawayh. Abu Hurairah, we're going to get to that. When we speak about the Sahaba and how do they fall, and the narrators of hadith, how they fall under this level. We want to know, find out, how do we know? How do we know? Play it 3 ways. The first way is, as the brother mentioned, ash-shuhra wa al-ittifala, is that it's by mass narration. So many people know that Imam Malik is Imam Malik. Khalas. He doesn't need someone to say Imam Malik's thiqah, it's Imam Malik. Well, then, the second way is for an imam who is trusted, who is mu'tadid, or mutashaddid, he's very harsh in his jarh, or he's moderate, to say he's trustworthy. He's trustworthy. This man is a trustworthy person. And the third way is for us to look at the hadith that he reported and compare them to the narrations of the other trustworthy narrators. Let's make an example of this. If someone came to you, and he said that Japan is what? He said that Japan is not. Japan isn't an island. It's not an island. Already, I've been to Japan. It's not an island. It's a solid, massive land. It's not an island. Play it. But then 20 people came to you, that you knew who were good Muslims, had good memory. They were educated, intellectual people, and they said Japan is an island, or Japan consists of islands. His narration clearly opposes their narration. So we would know that this person in himself is what? Not the hadith, himself. He's weak. Whether he's alive, but his narration is weak. He's weak. Because he opposed these people's narration, they're much more. So these are the ways in which we find out when a person is trustworthy. If an Imam, Ahmad, al-Bukhari, Ibn Ma'in, Ibn al-Madini, so on and so forth, if they clearly stated that this man was trustworthy. And the reason why they had the ability to do so is because they investigated their lives. The scholars of hadith, they had the hadith of one man, where he was born, when he was born, what country to which he traveled, how many children he had, and so on and so forth. They had these things memorized in their heart. Like a folder, your resume. They had these things memorized by heart. So they had the ability to declare who was trustworthy and who wasn't trustworthy. And the other way, if we found a narrator of hadith, in which we didn't find no one speaking about him, but we compared his narration. We took his narration and we compared them to the other narrations, we will find that they agree with those narrations. He becomes what? Trustworthy. And if we find that it went against those narrations, then he wouldn't be trustworthy. And the levels go back to what we mentioned. If he opposed them a lot, if he opposed them a few times, if it was a small mistake, a simple mistake, saduq, kebab, liar, weak, so on and so forth. Everyone clear on this issue? Clear on this issue? Well, now let's talk about the types of narrators. The types of narrators, the first level of narrators are the who? The companions, the Sahaba. And they are the first link in the chain. The Prophet ﷺ said this. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ did that. The Prophet ﷺ allowed us to do this. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ forbade us to do that. Now, where do we get this narration from? Hasan al-Basri? Did Hasan al-Basri meet the Messenger of Allah ﷺ? No. He had to hear from who? A companion. So the companions are the first link in the chain. We have Sahih Bukhari. Imam al-Bukhari, he says, Haddathana Ibn Rahawayh. He reported, Ali ibn al-Madini. And he reported from Sufyan ibn Uyayna, from Amr ibn Dinar, from Jabir ibn Abdullah, that the Prophet ﷺ said this and he said that. How do we know that someone heard it from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and that he was a companion? It's the first level of narrators. After the narrators come the tabi'een, the salaf, the people who met the companions, who heard from the companions, who studied with the companions. Then we have the next level, those individuals who didn't meet any companions, but they met those who met the companions. Up until Imam Malik, Ahmad, Bukhari, 3rd, 4th, 5th century, until this day in which the hadith aren't reported by the chain anymore. Okay? We pick up a book, Sahih al-Bukhari, and we read the hadith. We jad that. There's no riwayah. Okay? So the first level of narrators are the companions. And there are two things that we must mention with regard to the companions. Firstly, there is no difference of opinion amongst Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah that all of the companions are trustworthy. All of them. All of them are reliable. All of them are pious and have been promised paradise. All of the companions. There's no ikhtilaf on this companion being trustworthy and that companion being trustworthy. No khilaf. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah are in total agreement that all of the companions are adul. They're pious. All of them. So there is no investigation of a companion's integrity. There is no investigation of the accuracy or the hifz of this companion. As long as we're sure that he is a companion. As long as we're sure that he is a companion. Now let's ask a question. How do we know that a person is a companion? How do we know that someone is from the companions of the Messenger of Allah? Kate, how do we know this? How do we know he's a companion? How do we know this? That's the definition of a companion, but how do we know he's a companion? Question clear? How do we know he's a companion? By him being mentioned by other companions. Play it. Barakallahu, take it. What else? He saw the Prophet. How do we know we saw him? How do we know? How do we verify that he was a companion? Kayf? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned him himself. Ahsan. And the hadith has to be authentic. This person, that person. Ahsan. Play it. What's another way? It's very easy answer. Very easy answer, Quran. Very, very easy. How do we know he lived during the time of the Prophet? That's the question. How do we know? Kayf? It's that. You would say, for one of the trustworthy tabi'een, to say he's from the companion. If we had a trustworthy tabi'i, and he said, Fulan reported to me, and he was from the companions of the Messenger of Allah, and the chain was correct, was authentic, to that tabi'i, we could affirm that he had suhbah, he had discipleship or companionship. He's a companion. There's something that's a very, very easy way. No one is mentioning. Very easy, simple. His birth and his death. That's half of the answer. It's another half that you're missing. That's close though.
I understand. That's a third of the space.
One of the companions, for a person to affirm it to himself. That's part of what he just said. Part of it. It's something else very, very easy. Close. Get another warm. The answer is simple. The answer, from the ways that we know a person's companion, is it being famous and well known. Mutawatir. Is there any Muslim who differs that Abu Hurairah was the companion of the Messenger of Allah? Not. Why? Because it's Abu Hurairah. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Does anyone differ that Umar is a companion? No one. Why is that? Because it's well known. Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar was in it, that is known. So this is the first way, by something being so well known, so famous, that Fulan is from the companion. See how easy that was? That wasn't hard. But you were thinking something, it's simple, very simple, very simple. It's well known. Another example, one of the women from the companions that everyone knows. Aisha, radiallahu anha, Khadija. There's no difference of opinion that she was a companion. Right? Now, what is the meaning of a companion? What is the meaning of a companion? What are the conditions for a person to consider a sahabi? One who saw the Messenger of Allah. The first thing is whoever saw the Messenger of Allah. So what about those companions that were blind? Could they be companions or not? Well, that definition is something we got to fix it. Barakallahu fiik, Tariq. Saw, heard, or met. طيب. Piece by piece. The one he went is the last piece. Whoever met the Prophet ﷺ, whether he was blind, whether he could see or not, he met him, physically met him. Wait, what else? He died upon Islam. That's very good, but you're missing a lot in the middle. It's a front and a back, but there's a lot in the middle, but that's very good. Follow up. He met the Prophet ﷺ as a believer. There are many people who met the Prophet ﷺ and they weren't Muslims. And later on, when they went back to their countries, or after the Messenger of Allah ﷺ died, they accepted Islam. They're not companions. The first condition is that he had to have physically met the Prophet ﷺ. And the sisters, if they want to answer the questions, they can send them over on a piece of paper. The first condition of a companion, and this is extremely important. It's very important. We say following the companion. Who are the companions? Him. This is essential. The first condition is that he had to have met the Prophet physically. Not in a dream, but met the Prophet. Secondly, he had to be a believer in the Messenger of Allah. Anything else? Go learn. The Prophet mentioned their names. There's some people who met the Prophet and Hajjat al-Wada', the farewell Hajj, the farewell pilgrimage. There were thousands of companions. Thousands. It's not a condition. He said, died upon Islam. Sabaqaka biha Tariq. As he mentioned that he died upon Islam. What else? Follow. A very important issue. One was a great supporter of Islam, and he fought jihad. This is an issue in which the scholars differ. al-Hadith differ over. Some scholars say that for a person to be a companion, he is binding that at least he fought 2 battles. At least 2 battles. Uhud and Ahzab. Badr and Tabuk. Labud. And he at least had to report 2 hadith. Some scholars have this. The strongest view is that this isn't a condition. And that for a person just to meet the Prophet ﷺ and see his noble face, it's sufficient for him to be a Sahabi. Whether he reported a hadith or not, this shows the virtue of the Prophet ﷺ. Whether he reported a hadith, whether he fought jihad, whether he traveled with him a year, a month, al-Muhim, is that he met him. He physically met the Prophet ﷺ as a Muslim, and he died upon that. As we said in the beginning of the talk, that the science of al-Taʿdīl, we can't speak about it in 1 hour. Not enough time. There are several issues and important matters that could be spoken about and need to be spoken about, but it's not enough time. It's not enough time. No, every word is not enough time. So before we close out, we want to mention one thing which is extremely important, and that is the scholars of hadith and the ulama of Jarḥ and Taʿdīl who are qualified to speak about al-Jarḥ and Taʿdīl. They vary in levels and in their degree. They aren't the same. All of them aren't the same. All of the scholars of al-Jarḥ and Taʿdīl are not on one level. They're not on one level, on the same level of knowledge. They're not on the same level of harshness and softness. And it's something which is extremely important, is that there are many ulama of al-Jarḥ and Taʿdīl who are known as mutashaddidun. They're very strict, very harsh. If a person made 1 mistake, 2 mistakes, that's it, khalas. He's ba'id, just like that. Very harsh. And there are some scholars who are known to make tawthiq, to declare narrators to be trustworthy that may not have been qualified to be trustworthy. Or they may have been majhulun, unknown. Or easygoing, not baseen. And there are some scholars of Jarḥ and Taʿdīl who are known as mu'tadilun, who are moderate. They were in the middle. They weren't too harsh and they weren't too soft. The scholars who are very harsh, very strict, from the first generations of them was the Imam Sharīʿah. And afterwards, after Shu'bah was Imam al-Ma'in, Tashaddid. And after Imam Ibn Ma'in, we had what? Abu Hatim. And after Abu Hatim, Ibn Hibban. When it came to a person making a mistake, as the Zahabi said, qasabun, he was a butcherer, an executioner. Imam Ibn Hibban, may Allah have mercy upon him, who died in the year 354 of the Hijrah. He was an imam. If a person made a mistake or two mistakes or three mistakes, he would stretch them out and tear them apart. He was harsh. Then we have scholars who are mu'tadilun, who are moderate, such as who? Al-Imam Ahmad, Ahmed, Muḥammad ibn Sa'd, al-Bukhari, Abu Dawood. These are scholars who are mu'tadilun. They were moderate. Then we have the scholars who are mutastahilun, the scholars who are a little lax with regards to grading and criticizing the narrators. Wadih, such as Imam Ibn Hibban, with regards to majahil, some majahil, not all majahil. There's a couple. The Ibn Hibban says all majahil are some majahil. Some narrators who are unknown. He may say he's thiqa, even though he didn't know. And there are several other imams who are known for at-tasahul. So this is very important. Now let's get to the middle of it. If we have a narrator of hadith, we have the ulama of hadith, they speak about this narrator. He says he's trustworthy. He says he's weak. He says I don't know him. He says he's a liar. He says he's okay. He says this, he says that. They differ over this narrative of hadith. What do we do? Whose opinion do we take? And why? The narrative of hadith, Narrative hadith. The narrator of hadith. The scholars of hadith, of Jarḥ al-Taʿdīl, they differ over him. Ahmed said he's thiqa, trustworthy. Ibn Ma'in said he's a liar. He drunk khamr. He didn't pray in Jama'ah. And there are things worse than that. And Imam al-Tirmidhi said he was okay. And Ibn Hibban said this. What do we do? Whose view do we take? Because it's very important. It's a hadith now. Do we accept the hadith or do we reject the hadith? Do we accept it or do we reject it? Based off of this narrator. So what do we do? What do we do at Warren? What is the first step? Trouble. That which is apparent. Good. Ahsan. Part of it. Much more. Trouble. Think hard. Just think. I wonder if you have a good answer, actually. Barakallahu fikum. Find another hadith that's similar to that. Let's say this only hadith. It's the only hadith that talks about wiping over your socks. She's the only one who reported it. We need this hadith. It's cold. We live in a land that's cold. We need to know about wiping over socks and wiping over shoes. It's muhim. What do we do? Whose statement do we take with regards to those scholars? The harsh one, the soft one, the middle one? Allah. We look at the reasons behind criticism. Is the criticism detailed? Is it explained? Play it. Part of the answer. Ahsan. Good, but there's much more. There's a step before all of this. There are two main steps that we must take. The first step is, if we can take all of these statements and harmonize between them, and they don't contradict each other, in reality, this is similar to that, that's similar to this, it can mean the same thing, then that's better. Well, instead of putting them up here or putting them down there, we can say he's okay. He's not an A student. He's not an F student. We give him a what? A C. Middle course. Well, clear. Everyone clear on it? Does everyone agree with that? That's that. If we can take the statements of those imams and make tawfiq, harmonize between them, bring them together, then that's best. Rather, that's obligatory. Well, instead of him, he's not an A student. We can't make him an A student because this professor said that about him. He can't be an A student. He has these grades. Look at the test. He can't be an A student. But at the same time, that professor who failed him was too harsh. That professor who failed him, say he's a terrible student, he's too harsh. That we give him a C or a B minus. If we can't do that, let's say he said he's a liar. He's trustworthy. That's east and west. It's la yumkin to harmonize between a liar and trustworthy, right? Sheikh Hammer, is that possible? Is that possible to say a liar and trustworthy at the same time? Evident. So we have to say one statement is correct and one statement is what? Incorrect. So what are the steps that we make? And this is extremely important. When we mention Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, we mention Abu Zubayr, Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, this student, this is muhim. This is muhim. If we went up, the point we're trying to get to is, if you wish to apply al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl during 2011, then apply it. If you take the view that Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl exists today, and there is Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, rather it's wajib, and you must speak about it, and you must talk about it, and it's from the affairs, and it's muhim, it's important. Play it, then apply it. Apply it as a science. Don't apply it as half of a science. Don't apply one principle. Don't apply one rule. Apply it in totality. وَدُخُلُوا فِي السِّلْمِ كَافَّةً. Allah said in the Quran, oh, you enter into Islam wholeheartedly. Not half the deen. Oh, that sounds good, making salat, but giving zakat is not so good. La. Kullu shay. Everything. So, let's, as they say, get down to the nitty-gritty. Al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. If you want to speak about al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, then there are rules of Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. And from these rules is when the scholars differ over a narrative of hadith, you can't say, I'm taking Imam Ahmad's statement because that's Imam Ahmad. That's Imam Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, khalas, he has to be right. La. Or you can't say, I'm going to take Ibn Ma'in's statement. He said he's a liar, because that's harsh. And that's jarh. That's good. Or you can't say, I'm going to take the statement of the Imam who said it's trustworthy because it's a good thing. La. It's rules. It's rules. You have to look into those statements. So what are the steps? Come on. What are the steps? There's no way we can take the two statements and put them together. There's no way. He said he's a liar. He said it's trustworthy. And it's a person in the middle. There has to be a step. One brother mentioned, we look at the criticism. What is the proof that he's a liar? Is the person who declared him a liar known to just call people liars? It's very easy. It's a switch. You cut one off. Kadhab. If that's the case, then we have to slow down. We must slow down. We can't rush to accept that statement because he calls the main people liars. Sahih? Just like if a person who was relaxed, if he was mutatahid and he said everyone's thiqah, we had to slow down, put on a break to accept his tawfiq, his declaration of reliability. Right or wrong? This is very common sense science right here. This is common sense right here. Common sense. So, what do? One brother mentioned that we look at the details. It's detailed criticism that he's a liar. I clearly proved to him that he was a liar. I sat in his house. I asked him about this and about that and about this. Oh yeah, he was born in this year in this country. I say that Sufyan ibn Uyayna never traveled to that country. Okay, where did you hear? How did you meet him? He's a liar. That's detail. That's a tafsir. That Fulan narrated these hadith and he made a mistake in 25 hadith and 30 hadith. This is the proof. Detailed criticism. That's one thing. Not if this is the case and I think and I believe and I see and I think that he's a liar and I think that he's a liar. Has to be tafsir. Detailed criticism. Clear proof. Kasham. Wadih? Clear. There's another step. What's the other step? It's very simple. We have 3 levels. We have a harsh imam. Shu'bah. We have a mu'tadil imam, Ahmad. And we have a mutasahil imam, such as the Tirmidhi in some cases. Or Ibn Khuzaymah in some cases. Or Daraqutni in some cases. Whose statement do we take and why? What's the next step after we look at the detailed criticism? Alright, there's no detailed criticism. What do? Look at the detailed praise. Tayyib, which is an issue in itself. The kalam that we hear, that detailed criticism takes precedence, it is not an issue which is agreed upon amongst Ahlul Hadith. Abadan. There's some scholars who say that general praise isn't accepted. General jarh isn't accepted. There's a long, detailed issue. It's a science. It's not something you have to accept it. But let's go with the strongest view that the detailed jarh is accepted. And if it's general jarh, then it's not accepted. As long as we have ta'dīl. We have a scholar saying he's trustworthy. No one else said nothing else about him. We take that. But that's not the case right here. It's a mix. What do? One of the first steps that we do is what? Is that we look at the imam who is mu'tadil. We look at the imam who's moderate. We look at his statement firstly. What did the moderate imam say? The moderate Imam. Not the one who's really, really harsh. Not the one who's really lax, but the one who's moderate in the middle. Doesn't this make sense? Does this make sense? Without a doubt. And let's apply this to the current state of the da'wah now. The ulama. And Allah al-Mustan is very strange that there are some people who reject this. And they say, you can't say that the scholars are harsh and cake. It's just human nature. There's some people like Umar radiallahu anhu and Khalid ibn al-Walid. And there's some individuals like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Who soft, humble people. So therefore, if there are some of the mashayikh who said this, and some mashayikh said that, and some mashayikh said this, whose statement will we look at first? The moderate one, without a doubt. The one who has ilm, the one who has experience, and he's moderate. We wouldn't take the one who's the harshest. We wouldn't take the one who's the most lax. We would take the moderate one first. Well, it is. Plain. So therefore, if it came down to rejecting a statement, then there are several ways and manners of investigating those statements and looking into the chains of narrations in which we don't have the time to speak about. At the end of the day, in summary, in brief, the first step is to harmonize between the statements of the scholars. They really don't contradict. He said this and he said that. Okay, it means this. Well, if we can't do that, and we must take one opinion and reject the other, then we look at the moderate scholar first. And then we look at the details of the Jarḥ. So yeah, this is in brief. As we said before, there isn't enough time to talk about this in explicit detail. This is just like a primer. I think a beginning. I know you may have several questions, several concerns, several issues in which there's not enough time. So before we offer the salat, if there are any questions about the topic, then we'll take them now. And also as a correction, Abu Anas, may Allah preserve him, the hadith in which the Messenger of Allah said, will be taken into account for that which we say with our tongue. It's not by Ibn Mas'ud, but it's by Mu'adh ibn Jabal. Mu'adh ibn Jabal. Jazakumullahu khairan. Play it. Fadla. Play it. What's meant here by we is speaking in a plural tense. The people who qualify for that issue. Play it. And as a body, qualified as issue. Those people, and as we were going before, and we say again, and we'll say it again, that if Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, if you want to mention Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, la ba's. However, accept it wholeheartedly. And don't take half of it and a piece of it. That's firstly. And secondly, there was never a time, listen closely, there was never a time of the past, the current day, in which the scholars of Islam sat in front of the general Muslim, the general layman, the 9 to 5 Muslim, and stuffed down their throat to Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. There was never a time. Abadan. There was never a time in which they sat down in front of the general Muslims and said Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl. This is a disgusting mistake. That if Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl does exist, if this individual is like this, is like that, طيب, la ba's if you have your daleel, la ba's if you have your daleel, la ba's if you're sincere, seeking Allah's face, la ba's if you're qualified for that, la ba's. However, when was it from the way of the ulama and the way of the salaf to sit in front of the layman and talk about Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl? Bring me one example in which Imam Ahmad in Baghdad went to the main masjid and sat in front of the people who stole dates and perfume and bread and spoke about this narrator and that narrator and this illah and that illah and this illah. Bring me one example. Rather, the ulama of hadith mentioned that it's not from the good etiquette to go into too deep detail of the ilm, of defective narrations in front of the general people, because it will cause shak in their heart. What do you mean Sufyan al-Thawri made a mistake in this hadith? Imam Malik akhta in this hadith. Ibn Uyayna made a mistake in this hadith. That this hadith in Sahih Bukhari is weak. Okay, cause harm, cause doubt in his heart. Never for the general people. So the point that we're trying to mention is, and whoever's sitting here today, and whoever will hear my speech and listen to it, or be passed on, or tape, or whatever the case may be, al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, if you believe that it exists today, if you have your proofs and your adillah, if you're qualified to do that, if you're sincere in that, then apply it wholeheartedly and not just one piece. Al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl is not for some ignoramus, some jahil to speak about and talk about and expound and go into details. A jahil. That. Imam Ahmad was a mountain of knowledge. Al-Bukhari was a mountain of knowledge, and Shaykh Rabi'a, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, is a mountain of knowledge. What are you? So this is a very serious issue. This is a very serious issue. If you're going to apply Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl, apply it. But with all of the rules, with all of the qualifications, not just a small piece of it. Not just a small piece of it. Waḍih ikhwan? And if it does apply, then when does al-Jarḥ wa Taʿdīl apply to the layman Muslim, the 9 to 5 Muslim, the man who walks out that masjid, he's going to go to work, and he listens to the radio at work, his kuffar women walking around him. Is that going to benefit his heart as a Muslim? Is that going to allow him to go the rest of his day making dhikr of Allah, seeking rizq for his family? Is that going to help him? I'm asking you, will that help him? Is that something he can take home to his wife and his children? I benefit, I learned from the lecture at the Masjid. Billah alayk. By Allah asking, will that help him? No. Rather, as we see in our communities, we'll be busy ourselves. Call this person, this sheikh, this student, so on, back and forth. Ask them about wudu. Ask them about salah. Ask them about zakat. Ask them about seerah. I don't know what year the Battle of Uhud was in. Naam Umar? I don't know what year was the Battle of Badr in, but he can tell you about every detailed tissue of criticism and ikhtilaf amongst the ulama. Wal-iyadhu billah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to correct our fears, and to correct our hearts, and correct our tongues, and to make us true followers of the Salaf, and true followers of the ulama, those who love the ulama and respect the ulama, and take the advice of the ulama, and not those who say it with their tongue. The talk is cheap. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.